Hello, yogis. In this week's group coaching session, I'm going to be interviewing our good friend, Eli Haski from the Canberra Yoga Space studio. And we're going to be digging into the complex world of owning and managing a yoga studio. But first, a little bit about Eli. Eli's an experienced yoga teacher who completed her teacher training with us 10 years ago now and has owned her Canberra-based studio for 5 years now. And Ellie's generously agreed to share with us some of the lessons she's learned in balancing teaching and practice and living a yoga life, along with the demands of running a business. And I have heaps of questions gathered from our yoga community. Plus, I hope to give Ellie some space to just kind of talk about what's on her mind in her world of practicing and teaching and running a yoga business. And I'm sure you're going to learn so much from Ellie's experiences and insights. So let's get started. So Ellie, you started as a personal trainer and then added yoga teaching to your business. And I'm interested to know, how did you grow your business from kind of being on the road, teaching all over Canberra, to owning a yoga studio? Could you talk about that?
Yeah. So it was a funny journey for me, like all the way through, from being a trainer to then going into yoga teacher training. With not a huge amount of yoga experience. I dabbled for a long time and then ended up in your training, which was amazing and life-changing. When I finished, I went from no classes. I was teaching roughly 10 sort of group older adult strength and mobility classes and exercise classes and in gyms, dance, fitness, and da-da-da. And I went from 0 yoga classes to 8 within about 2 months. So I picked up teaching in a gym at Club Lime, and I was teaching in a few of their gyms. I picked up teaching all around at ADFA. I think that started pretty early. I can't remember now. It was a while ago. So I picked up a lot of classes, but one of the classes that I did pick up was at Canberra Yoga Space with Monica. So I got a call from this woman who said, I've heard about you and I want you to come and teach at my studio. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I'm fresh out of teacher training, and I had an interview with her, and it turned out, when I ended up buying the business off her 4.5 odd years later, it turned out that I was the first teacher signed up and the first person to teach a class at the studio. So I was like, well, that's quite special, So yeah, it was quite a strange journey, but it went really, really quickly. I think that's also because, like, I fell in love with yoga so much through the teacher training, and it helped me personally grow so much. And so the energy was there, and the classes kind of came to me, and I just started doing it, and that was it, So it was quick, Yeah.
But at first sounds like you were dealing with just kind of getting your feet wet, and then your feet got extremely wet very fast.
Yeah.
And then with a few years under your belt, you felt confident enough to take on the studio.
Well, sort of. That was weird too. Like, my whole career's been pretty weird. Like, things just drop into my lap. So at the time, I was teaching 25 odd classes a week between yoga and the fitness stuff. I was studying bodywork as well. So before I did yoga, I was studying specialized kinesiology, and that kind of took a back burner, but I was always interested in the bodywork. And so I was studying a lot, and Monica was deciding to move to Thing, and she said, would I manage the studio for her while she was in Queensland and da-da-da. And I'm like, no, I'm not, can't do that. I'm studying, and I can't do my own admin because I was freelancing everywhere. So I have my own admin to do. I'm like, no, I can't do all of that. And then some months later, I was in the shower, and it was just like, if I quit this and I quit this and I quit this, maybe I could do it, because she was now selling the studio at that point. I had no money, and I'm like, I messaged her and I'm like, maybe I could buy the studio. And then, a little while later, she messaged me. She's like, finally, you've woken up to what I've seen in you a long time ago. You're very behind the 8 ball. Let's go. So anyway, 5 weeks later, I'd bought it and, managed to rustle up money and write a business plan in 3 days and do a whole bunch of stuff that I was like, didn't even know I was capable of doing, which I somehow did it. And then boom, boom. Now I'm in this for 5 years. So
It's incredible. And there's a few things that are incredible about that to me. Number one, I couldn't possibly make time for managing a yoga studio, but I'll own one. I'll take on all of it, right? So hilarious. So obviously you had to scale back on some of your own teaching to make space for that. And your car was probably happy because it's 25 classes a week. You're putting a lot of clicks on your car, right? And now you're sort of more centered in one place. And was it hard to give up some of your clients in order to focus on the studio?
it was a little bit. I mean, what I gave up. Sorry, my eyes watering. What I gave up were the strength and mobility stuff. So the personal training sort of side of things. I knew I wanted to just get all in with the yoga. So I quit teaching for the YMCA, which was like, well, I did 4 classes back to back on a Friday, which was pretty intense. So I quit that and I quit the gym classes and stuff. So it was kind of like, now's my time. I wanted to get out of that anyway. My body was starting to really feel the pressure of doing so much. If I didn't work, I didn't get paid, and I was single parenting and I was exhausted. So it was kind of like, well, I can condense things down if I do this. And hopefully I would make some money, like some money that I didn't have to earn every cent, that I could pay myself a wage, and then I didn't have to physically be doing every cent that I earned, That was a big motivator, actually. And I was looking at the books and everything, and I'm like, well, if this can't fail. Like, it was just going up and up. And, I said to my mum on the phone, I'm like, I'd have to be a real idiot for this to all fall apart, Little did I know COVID was coming, but anyway, so, but no, the first, it was good. It was time. I believe in the timing of everything is divine. And so it was just time. And I felt like, it's time to stop running around like crazy and condense everything. And it just, it literally was like from one day to the next, a decision was made and boom,
Wow. And yeah, and you bring up a really good point that when we're sole traders and we're teaching face to face, that we are earning money out of our literal bodies in every hour of our time. And as a young yoga teacher, that was great for me. I loved it. But as I got older, as I started collecting injuries, that got harder and harder. And that's when I also had to make a change. So it sounds like we're kind of on the same wavelength with that. And then, and you've led me into my next question, because you've been running a yoga studio for 5 years, which means almost 4 of those years you've been navigating a pandemic, which must have been a huge challenge. How did you adapt? How did you pivot? How did you make a switch?
Well, I was fortunate in that I had spent the first year in business, which was going gangbusters, saving money, because my plan was to expand the business and move to a downstairs location so I could service more people that had mobility issues and couldn't make the 20 stairs that there are to get up to us. So I was in negotiations already with the landlord about a space that was downstairs and blah, blah, blah. So I had saved up $60,000, which was all from the studio. I started the studio with $9,000 in the bank and built it up in that year to 60,000. So I was pretty proud of myself. And so I had that money there, which is literally what kept us going. From, not being, I don't know, and I'd just been to Thailand on a yoga business retreat with a business coach, which was great. And I was like, right, this is what we're doing, da, 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 da. And there was talk of pandemic just as I was coming back. And I had been the victim of a fraud within the business. Somebody booked some classes and paid, and I won't go into it because it's long and boring, but I'd been defrauded about $3,000, which I got back just before the pandemic, which was amazing. And then literally I had seen the writing on the wall that we were going to be locked down. And so I started doing research about how to go online, and I found Zoom and through various things. And so I was in the process pre-lockdown of starting to work out, okay, how am I going to do this? So amazingly, I don't know actually how I did it, but literally from one class we were face to face. The very next class that afternoon we were online, and I just switched it all over. And it took about 2 weeks to teach the teachers how to use it and get them confident in being on camera, and teach all the students how to use it. But in that 2 weeks, I watched my studentship go down by more than half. Like every day I was getting emails, can you cancel my membership? Can you cancel my membership? Can you cancel my membership? And so I was just like crying, like, we're going online, like, don't cancel. Anyway, we lost half our studentship, and it's taken all this time to get back maybe 25% of that we lost. So
wow.
It's
and do you think that 25% just went and got an online subscription, or they're practicing with YouTube, or did they leave yoga? Do you have any sense of where those people went?
I think many probably just went onto YouTube. Many stepped away from their practice. I mean, Canberra is such a transient town as well, so a lot of people have moved away and what have you. And so, yeah, I don't know. They just disappeared, and over the years, some people have sort of dribbled back in, because I recognize the names. You know, when I get emails, you sort of start to pick up on the names, and so, you know, I know many of our students by name, but haven't met them all. But I know most of our clients. But yeah, I mean, it was a really tough couple of months, you know. And at the same time, somebody had nominated me for a Telstra Small Business Award. So at the same time, I'm trying to do this small business award. It's asking me, how is your business growing, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, it's freaking
sailing out the ship. Like we're
it's exactly how it felt. Like I'm just, you know, like, but, you know, I mean, a few things I would do differently through that time. I made the mistake of trying to satisfy everybody the whole time. So I'll try and get rid of that, my beautiful shining halo. I made the mistake of trying to satisfy everybody. So I tried to satisfy all the teachers and not cut classes. I tried to satisfy all the students by making sure that everything went online. And that cost me thousands of dollars that I probably didn't need to spend, because I could have just scaled back the timetable and said, this is what's on offer for the time being, and we'll look at it later. And there were like, you know, many classes where just 1 or 2 people were showing up online, and that was it. And it was costing me money every time. And I had to alter the remuneration because I was trying to retain. I knew I had the buffer because I had all that money there, but I knew that wasn't going to last forever, you know, and I still had rent to pay and all the other expenses that come with the studio. So it was pretty scary time, you know. It's still scary, to be honest. Like, we are nowhere near where we were, and last month particularly was just like, oh gosh, you know, like, where are we? So I always am thinking of what can I personally put on to bring money into the studio. I do a lot of teaching where I don't pay myself as a teacher. I just pay myself a wage, and it's like, well, if I've brought in an extra $2,000 into the business, then that's great, because that's money I didn't have to pay out in order to get, you know. So,
Mm.
which it feels a bit not good, to be honest. Like it feels sad that I'm doing these fabulous things and they're full, but I'm not actually being, energetically compensated for it, but I've sort
Mm.
of made my peace with that,
Yeah. Keeping the business afloat, has to be the priority. And it's
yeah.
the same on my end. Things are not back to where they were. They probably won't ever be, because the industry has changed over these 4 years. And there's a lot more online offerings, for, $20 a month or $99 yoga teacher trainings in my case. And I, it's not that I can't compete with that. I won't compete with that. I won't do that. I value what I do and I value my relationship with my students. And it's funny you say you recognize people's names, because what students might not realize, even when you're not seeing them face to face all the time, we know you. We see your names when we're doing admin, and we care about you
Mm-hmm.
when we're doing admin as much as we care about you when we're teaching your class. Like, that sense of caring and holding space happens not just in the studio in front of the camera, it happens in all facets of our business. And
Mm-hmm.
and it's something that does take energy, and you do hope to get some of that energy back if you can. But it's been a tough couple of years. It's been a tough couple of years for so many businesses, but particularly yoga studios and people who offer face-to-face things, who had to, you made a pivot really fast, you were smart, you had some cash in the bank. So those are two great lessons. Be listening to the whispers, right? Watch what's going on around you and be ready to make a change, and then try and have some cash in the bank to fall back on, because you never know what's coming, right? So those were two unexpected lessons to learn that you were ready to learn,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
um, and as to student attrition, I mean, we always have student attrition. There's always some students falling away because they got a new job, they moved house, they decided to do CrossFit, whatever, and then new people coming in. But I'm interested to know kind of how you navigate that rhythm of some people dropping out and new people dropping in. How do you manage your student population?
Mm. Well, it's interesting. When I bought the business, Monica was very much about the beginners workshop, the beginners course. So the beginners course was like a feeder into the studio population. So we were running this 6 weeks beginners course that she had created and given me the rights, intellectual property rights, to be able to use. And we had this course that had 9 classes a week, and students could come to any of the 9 classes anytime over the 6 weeks, right? So they really wanted them to be 1 or 2 classes a week for the 6 weeks. And so this was like when I first took over, it was $99. And so we would get this cash injection, and it was busy, like we were having very full, I was advertising on Facebook. And so it was very busy, 60, 70 students signed up to this beginners course. And so that was how we had the feeder, and about maybe 20-30% of those people would continue on into the general student population. So that was how the people came. But when COVID happened, right, there was this whole discussion about how do we do beginners online? Is it safe to do beginners online? The teachers were all like up in arms. I don't want to teach beginners online. What if they're doing something wrong? I can't be there to assist, and I can't see what's going on, and da 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 da. And I was like, okay, because I'm a very versatile teacher with my body work and all of that. I'm like, well, just give really good cues, like da 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 da, like take it slower and give your cues properly, and it'll be fine, like. And they were all freaking out, like, no, I don't do like that, and blah blah blah. I'm like, okay, cool. So what happened? The beginners course petered off, and then we decided to not run it online when we were in lockdown and stuff like that. So that was a really big chunk of we weren't getting $8,000-9,000 every weeks to chunk everything up. I mean, that's how I managed to save all that money, was because we were getting this big cash injection every 6 weeks. And so now and then we tried to run the beginners course again in a different format, which put it to a 4-week course, and then over a few different classes, not 9 classes, because I had to scale back. I couldn't afford to be running 9 classes with like 3 or 4 people in them. That's just crazy town. And so we scaled it back, but the course, you know, the intake really diminished. So we went from like 60 people to 30 people, and then several of the courses we ran at 30 people in the whole course. And I'm just like, this is ridiculous. We can't do this anymore. So we just scrapped it. And for the last year, I've been running a beginner's workshop. So once a month, we'd run a workshop. And then I had 2 classes on the timetable that were beginner level. So then we'd feed those people into these timetabled classes. And so people could kind of come whenever, or they could do this 2-hour workshop, which was really like the absolute basics: breathing, props, teach them, break down a Surya Namaskar and teach them that, so that then they can rock up to any class. They know what a sun salutation is. They can know about the breathing a little bit. They're familiar with the studio. They're familiar with props to make their practice more comfortable, because most of our clientele are 35 and upward. Most of them are, our age and older. And so, that was how we navigated it. And so that started out well. We had it full at 20 people because, of course, our class maximum number of people in the studio also reduced, right? So everywhere there became these boundaries that made it close in. So that was not good. But I've just recently scrapped that. For this next year, I've decided, okay, let's go back to the beginners course. I've reimagined it a little bit due to how our new booking system. One of the best things I did over COVID was get a new booking system. That was like a great thing to do, right? So I'm like, it's quiet, I can do that transition. So, but that has some limitations as well in terms of course creation and having people to be able to pick and choose what classes. And I don't like that anyway. So I'm like, okay, this is how we're doing it now. 4-week course, you can go to Monday, Wednesday, or Saturday. You can't chop and change between. You pick, you commit. What I find now, post-COVID, is people's level of commitment is very lacking. Like they just
drastically reduced.
Don't want to commit. Everybody's frightened. But if I get sick and I've spent this money and I can't finish it, what do I do? And it's just like, relax, people, we'll look after you. Just get in and do your yoga because you need it. Like, calm down. So yeah, I forgot the question, but hopefully it covers it. I get on a tangent.
Really super useful. And yeah, the couple of things I want to mention that I've seen from my end as well. Like, people are very worried about making a commitment, or hesitant, not worried, hesitant, procrastinating. And I always think to myself, is it because of the thousands of dollars people have invested in their Qantas and Virgin flight credits that they're loath to put any money towards something where they might have to, they get sick or travel or some interruption? They don't trust companies anymore to do the ethical thing. And yeah, I find that very interesting, right? And having to be really, really clear. And this is another thing that we'll talk about. Having to be really clear about what people can expect from us as a business and how we'll care for them, and being able to explain that thoroughly. But people don't read as much anymore. They're pretty quick to flick past things. So one of my problems is, how do I really inform people knowing that they're probably not going to read this whole thing? And I'm interested to know if you have the same issue when people are going through their class registration and your policies and like how many classes a week they can come to. Are you spending a lot of your time explaining things over and over to people who just haven't read?
Yes, less so with the new booking system. So when I was with and because of the policies that were in place when I took over, I think when you start a business from scratch, you have the luxury of being able to say, okay, this is my cancellation policy, this is my this is my that, and you can set your boundaries up as you please. When you take over, you've got this legacy from somebody else's way of doing things, um, and um, and then you've got your own ethics, in that as well. So I had a bit of a struggle because some things, one, the booking system we were using, Mind Body, it was rubbish. And so I spent a lot of time apologizing for failures in the system and problems. We had this cancellation policy that nobody ever read. And so I was dishing out credits left, right, and center. And I struggled with boundaries because I want to please everybody. I had all that people pleasing thing, and I'm just like, oh, okay, yes, I'll credit you back that. And yes, I'll credit you back that. So I was just like giving money away continuously pre new booking system. Because the system would stuff it up, and so I was like, oh, okay, well, here you go, so yeah, I mean, it's really, you really get to learn how to set, create, and maintain boundaries when you have, a business. And if you're not very good at that, then that's part of your yoga practice, right? Like that makes you really learn how to say no and learn how to stick to your guns and all of that. So it was really difficult.
Yeah. It's a balance, right? Because you want to care for your students.
Yeah.
And you want to make sure their needs are being met. And I don't like keeping people's money if they don't want me to have it. Like that's one of my things. But if I don't run my business effectively, I won't have a business, and then no one gets to study, right?
Yeah.
I mean, not in the world, like they'll find other places, but I don't get to work with them. And I like what I do. And I think I offer something really great.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's always a balancing act. If I have to think of the health of my business, but I also have to provide a service that's ethical and that respects people's needs and wishes. And that does tend to be a bit of a balancing act. And like you, I do tend to err on the side of, oh, okay. And then regretting it. I look at the balance sheet. Before I get distracted, you were with Mind Body Online, which in Australia especially is very, very expensive, and it wasn't working well for your studio. Who are you with now?
I'm with Moments now. And they called me on a good day. I was having the craps with Mind Body, and they called, and I'm like, all right, I'll have a look at it. And so I had a whole bunch of questions with the things that weren't working with Mind Body, and I said, okay, well, what about this? And he's like, oh, you just do this, dun 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 dun, click. And I'm like, and you just do this. And I was just like, okay. And it was like $50 cheaper. It's still expensive. It was a big effort.
$50 a month cheaper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like on quite a big package with Mind Body as well. So I'm just paying, I think I paid close to $600 odd a month for the booking system, but it solved a lot of my problems this moment. And another good thing about transitioning was I was able to reestablish some of my policies. So I was able to reestablish the cancellation policy. I was able to reminds, we had this, if you don't use your credits, if you're on direct debit and you don't use your credits, you got 14 days to make up the credits. But people will be like, oh, I haven't used my credits for, whatever. I've got 10 credits, I think, left that I haven't used, can I use them? And I would just free up all these credits, right? And I was just handing it over. Now the system does it all on its own. I don't have to do anything. And if it doesn't work, occasionally I'll get an email, oh, it hasn't worked at it, and I'll bung one credit in and book them into that class, and that's it. But that new booking system gave me back like literally 3-4 hours a week, which is huge.
Huge.
Because a lot of the time in my student admin, I was fixing problems, answering emails to fix problems that mind body was creating. And so, I had all this time back and I'm like, oh, this is great. Now I'm running a business that only takes me 2-3 hours a day plus the teaching, instead of 4-5 hours a day, because most of the time I'm spent there apologizing and answering emails. So it was a great, it was a lot of work to transition it. But once I did, and I trained everybody how to use it and and it was just life-changing, really. And I don't have to follow up those things, because the cancellation policy is delivered on a confirmation email, to say, if you need to cancel your class, you've got to do it before 2 hours or you lose your credit, that kind of thing. And I was able to set up the parameters as I wanted it to be. So it was really refreshing, so.
And so it sounds like that's taken a lot off your desk as far as time and energy. And also, like, it's can feel really defeating to spend your day apologizing to people and fixing problems.
Yes.
So that must have freed up a lot of emotional energy as well for you to make that change. And that's one of the things, I'll segue into that now, because for a lot of people who look at a yoga business, they think we're just like, things just flow all the time and we're just like breathing in incense and oming and like there's no problems. And there's problems. Wherever there's humans, there's problems, right? So I'm interested to know, so you took over some policies and procedures on how to deal with cancellations, no-shows, people wanting refunds, things like that, which are difficult situations to navigate, right? They're not always clear-cut. You've been able to refresh some of those policies that better match you as a business owner. But how is there, what backs up your decisions about how you deal with conflicts or how you deal with difficult decisions? Because you're a sole trader, you have a team of teachers, but ultimately it's on you. So like, what's the foundation for you to deal with those things?
Well, I mean, it's really important that I do my practice, for one. I found that is incredibly essential, that I maintain my own practice, because it helps keep me grounded and in the flow. I've been really lucky, that I haven't had too many conflicts. There's been times where people have had a direct debit going and they haven't realized that they have a direct debit going. I don't know if we've frozen.
Froze for a sec.
Okay.
Can you start again? You said you've been really lucky, and then I didn't hear anything.
Okay. I've been quite lucky because I haven't had too many conflicts. I've had a couple of things with some teachers, and I've dealt with those. Probably I could have dealt with them better, in hindsight, but getting into email war is not good. Better to just ring up and have a conversation, even if it's tough and awkward, and just say, look, this is not working. So I think that's a better way to do things. Like in the future, if I have a problem with a teacher, it's definitely a phone call, not an email. I like email, hiding behind email, because it's just like, oh, I don't have to pick up the phone and call, but it doesn't, when you've got difficult things to deal with, you can't get the tone across, and you can't show that you're actually caring and compassionate for this person, but the behavior or the thing is not in alignment with, what we want to do. So definitely I would make phone calls rather than send emails. I've had a few situations where people have had a direct debit going, but they haven't realized it. And it's been like 8 months, and they call me and say, I don't understand why I'm paying you this money. And I'm like, well, you signed up for it. I can't chase you to cancel it if you leave. Like, that's not my problem. So I really, that happened to me once, and I ended up paying that person back like 500 something dollars during COVID. And it was heartbreaking. She owed, like, it was $900 or something. And I said, look, I'm not paying you back the whole amount. It's not my responsibility to check your bank account that you're paying me the money. It's your responsibility. If you're not checking it in 7 months, you're really not that hard up for money, are you? Because I know I check my bank account every freaking day, right? And I know every cent that goes out of it. So you obviously don't know. If you're not noticing $30 a fortnight, that's not my problem. So that, was difficult to rectify. And I didn't need to refund, but I chose to get that energy out of my business, and I negotiated it, and it was quite empowering to say, actually, no, like, it's quite remarkable. We fear saying no to people and putting that in place, but when you do it, it's kind of like, yeah, I'm really proud of myself for doing that.
Yeah.
So,
giving is part of yoga, and compassion and caring and supporting our students, but saying no is also a part of yoga. Boundaries are a part of yoga, right? Like, yeah, like all of this is part of our yoga practice, and also part of what we're modeling to our students. Like, if I have to give myself these talks all the time, if I'm too wet and squishy, right, there's nothing solid for this business to run on and for my students to rely on.
Yeah.
And so I do, it's been a lot, 27 years in business. I still have to give myself little pep talks, but like, you have to back yourself in moments where that the ethics are on your side, and that the business can't run without you establishing a boundary, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, that's a big part of how I deal with, I mean, conflicts don't come up that often in yoga businesses. That's what makes them surprising when they do, that it feels like a conflict. What?
Yeah.
So that's why we have to be ready with having given people the information they need when they sign up, and have them have an understanding of what they can expect from us, and have an understanding of what we expect from them, so that things are a lot clearer if should a conflict ever arise, or should a problem ever arise. And then being willing to know when you need to back yourself, to know when someone's in genuine need and you want to do a compassionate thing for them, and also know those moments when you're like, I don't like this energy. I don't want to keep carrying this around. I'm going to clear this out, because this isn't working for me anymore, right? And so being able to figure out those moments, it takes a lot of practice.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's all, it's all just in the moment as well. Like, your line in the sand might shift here and there, but having that, that basic understanding of what will I tolerate and what won't I, and, and keeping reminding people. I mean, I've put in my newsletter every now and then, if I see something coming up, I'll put it in my newsletter just as a little reminder at the bottom, like, hey guys, like, let's remember to, fold up the blankets really nicely, and stuff like that. Or I'll put a post on social media that kind of reminds people about, what's acceptable and what's not, and it's part of teaching people how to take their yoga off the mat as well. Like, it's not, there's this thing that people want to come to yoga, and I'm going to do my one class a week in my drop-in class and tick my yoga box, and now I'm enlightened and fantastic. And it doesn't work like that. Like, this is a practice to do regularly, and we want to be embodying what we learn on the mat outside, in the outside world. And I think that as the studio owner and the leader of this shebang, it's important that I keep reiterating that, and modeling it for people. Which
the first limb of yoga is how we conduct ourselves in community, right?
Yeah.
like that. And so we do, as you say, we do have to model that, and we do have to remind students of that, that how you conduct yourself within this community is what makes this community.
Mm-hmm.
And and is the foundation of your yoga practice. So yeah, that's something that requires constant effort. It requires constant effort for us to practice this ourselves. So of course
That's
it requires constant effort for our students as well, right?
And that's
um
why, showing up to your practice, your personal practice, even when you're teaching a lot, is super important. I mean, for the first several years, I was teaching so much, I wasn't practicing for myself at all. And I could feel this disconnect. I was reading lots of books and trying to do a little bit of meditation and stuff like that. So I kind of was like, well, that's my practice in a way, with doing more study, because I felt like I was way behind the eight ball when I finished teacher training. I'm like, okay, like now I have to be this yoga person, but I don't know shit. Sorry, the language, right? I better go and self-educate myself. So I spent, years, thank God for audio books, and I was doing so much driving, but I spent years listening to different audio books and podcasts and trying to just absorb as much yoga information as I can. And it's only in the last sort of 3 years that I feel like, oh, maybe I know a little bit about yoga now, because I had such a
Trouble with
different
teacher
journey.
training is you find out, you learn so much in teacher training, but one of the big things you learn is how vast yoga is, and that you'll never know it all or understand it all or even be able to experience it all. And so it does tend to set many of us, I was the same, running years from course to course and book to book and class to class, trying to absorb it all. I look back on those days with a lot of fondness, and it also makes me feel tired just thinking about it. Um,
Yeah.
but one of the good things about being in that phase of yoga is being able to see what's happening right now in yoga, like being able to have an overview. You're studying traditional texts and you're studying traditional styles, but you're also, if you're going to lots of classes, or listening to lots of podcasts, you're also hearing like what's happening right now in yoga. So I'm interested to know that from you. What are you seeing from your position, kind of above, looking at your teachers and your students in your studio? What do you think people are looking for in yoga? What do you think the trends are right now?
Oh, that's a tough question. I live in a little bit of a bubble, so I kind of don't look at too much stuff. I just recently went to a Yoga Australia mini conference, and that was really interesting. I kind of don't know if anybody in Australia really knows what's going on in yoga at the minute. Everyone's kind of scratching their head going, I don't know what's happening here. Where are the people, Because I think across the board, it's really quiet, and getting people into classes is really tough. I think in Canberra, it seems people like to just get their drop-in class. I don't know if there's so much investigation into really studying yoga and being immersed in kind of practice. We're lucky in our studio, we've got a lot of students who've been practicing with us for many, many, many years, and they love going to their Iyengar class or their Ashtanga class, and that's what they do. They'll dabble in a few others because we've got these, lineages, plus then flow classes and yin and restorative yin, and so there's things, and I do weird things for myself which incorporate all the body work, and I call it a therapeutic practice, not yoga therapy. There's a big difference, but a therapeutic practice because I weave in things. But I think people are coming for their health. And I think that they're not really into investigating these deeper sides of yoga and learning about the other aspects of yoga. They're just pretty asana based, and that to me is sad. I'm trying to think of things, how can we encourage more investigation into yoga philosophy, and I'm and doing more chanting or trying to put on kirtan or, you know, something like that. I mean, I do the meditation, but that's also not really traditional yoga, right? I think there's a big blur now also, particularly here in this, what is traditional yoga and what is just asana, you know, your flow situation that's exercise and da da da. And I think sadly, people are still got this mindset of coming to yoga for exercise, which is heartbreaking, because it is an exercise, but that's not the shouldn't be the. It's great that that's what gets people in, but hopefully other things make them stay and continue to practice. You know.
Yeah. In our training, we call that modern postural yoga.
Yeah.
All the Ashtanga, Vinyasa flow, power yoga, all of those things, which are great movement practices and an opportunity to practice mindfulness, but it isn't the same as olden days when you and I first got started, where there was tended to be a lot more exploration of breath work and mudra and mantra and meditation and community. And I'm curious as to what impact it has on your sense of community when people are availing themselves of drop-in classes, but there isn't an opportunity for that kind of third space for people to have community in yoga. And I know people are busy and they're time poor and they're energy poor, but are we missing out on those opportunities for community in the studio space now?
Look, I think so. I think, you know, it's taken me a long time to get comfortable with being the head of a community, which is essentially what I am. I think that within the class groups, there's community. So people that go regularly to that particular class, they get to know each other, they have a little chat and da da da, and there is community. But as a studio,
like the Iyengar people hang out and the Ashtanga people hang out, and
yeah, they just, you know, they say hi to each other in class. I don't know if they particularly get together after class, but I know that friendships have been created at the studio between people. I know with my classes, there's a community because it's the same people that show up every week. They sometimes go to other of my classes, so they'll see each other two times a week, these people. And so there's that sense of community there. And then, you know, and I think the newsletter helps to create that community because, you know, we can, just because we're not seeing each other doesn't mean there's not a sense of community, you know? And so I think that I've realized the importance of my social media, right? I've realized the importance of my newsletter. I mean, I went to the yoga conference the other week and I had so many people say to me, "Oh, I love your newsletter. I read it every time you send it out." Da, da, da. I'm like, "Oh, wow. Okay, thanks." Like I didn't realize anybody even read that thing. And you know, thank you so much for what you're doing for yoga in Canberra. You're really doing, you know, amazing things, da da da. And I was really shocked because I had zero insight into the impact that I was having on people. You know, I thought, oh God, here I am writing this thing, stripping myself bare as I normally do because I'm a total open book, and just writing about what's really kind of happening for me in this moment and how my practice, I always try and come back to how is my practice supporting my life, because I think that's what helps other people remain connected to their practice and regular in it, you know, because that's where the magic is, right? When we're showing up and you know, I'm lucky that, you know, our teachers do a lot of, you know, breath work, and I want to introduce more things like mantra, like specific mantra class or specific pranayama class, or, you know, that kind of thing. But you know, the community side of it is really, really difficult, you know, but it is there. I just don't know if we always see it, you know.
yeah. I mean, you're not teaching every class. Like you have your classes that you teach each week,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have teachers that have their own regular classes,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
you have people doing covers, I assume.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's your strategy for who teaches what class and how many classes you teach versus teachers. Is there a strategy, or has it all just kind of happened?
Sort of. Well, I inherited a timetable as well, which has pretty much stayed relatively the same. I mean, my teachers are pretty consistent from when I took over to now. I only really lost a few. Some of them I was grateful for, and others, was sad. And then I've had to scale back the timetable. I do teach a lot of classes, and I do tend to step in and fill a lot of classes because that's financially what the studio needs. But I have to find a balance for myself, and I teach the specialized stuff. So I teach the prenatal and the postnatal. They're both very specialized, and it's, there's nobody to cover me with those. It's very difficult to find cover. And it's, yeah, the teachers have just been teaching those classes for a long time. And every year I'm like, how are we going? Do you want to continue with that class, or do you want to change something? Or, and I'm very open. So if someone comes to me and says, Ellie, I want to change the name of my class, or I want to start teaching such and such a thing, I'm like, okay, great, let's do it. Send me a description. We'll change it over. We'll let students know, blah, blah, blah. Let's do it. I'm very supportive of my teachers. I want them to teach what they love and what they want to teach, because that's what they're going to be passionate about. I'm not the kind of owner that says, I want you to teach this class at this time, and that's what I'm employing you to do.
It's great that you're giving people space to innovate and create and follow what they're passionate about, and also what they see their students, the direction that their students are wanting to go in.
Yeah.
Because, yoga's not one thing. It's always evolving.
It's always. And I know for myself, like, I'm creative. I'm very creative in the way that I teach. If I learn something new, I like to see how can I incorporate that into my class, and what the response is. And my students are very forgiving, and they're very trusting of me, because they know, like, I'm not going to take them down a wrong path. I've been practicing a lot of Kundalini lately. So I'm like, weaving a little Kriya in here and a little Kriya in there. And they're very receptive to it. And I think it's important that teachers feel supported to be able to be creative and teach what they want and what they love. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, okay, let's rethink it, and have that dialogue, but it is evolving. I mean, you said something in the teacher training that always stuck with me, and it was like, here's yoga, right? Now go and make it your own. And I took that really literally, because I have so many modalities that I've investigated and worked with over the years, that it's created my offering, and I'm lucky that people like it, but it is always evolving. And if we think, okay, I'm just, this teacher is just teaching that, and that's all they can teach, that's very limiting. And we don't want to feel limited, and some teachers, the Ashtanga and Iyengar, that's what they teach. They're happy teaching that. That's their style. And I'm really grateful that we have those two lineages in the studio. I feel it gives us a lot of credibility. It gives us a lot of establishment that we're not just a flow studio, which there's nothing wrong with that. It's great. Flow classes are great and really good and nice and a wonderful place to explore. But I think, even though I don't practice Ashtanga or Iyengar, right, but it's good to have them there, so that people who have heard of those, that want to experience those, and particularly for new students and teachers, I think it's important as teachers that we have gone to those sorts of classes and to experience proper lineages. Well, not proper lineages, it's not a great language, but experience.
What do you mean, though? Those were evolutions from 100 years ago, that a teacher like you took what they learned and went, I'm going to do this with it. Mm-hmm. And then that got practiced for a lot of years until it was really refined, right? Yeah. I mean, I'm always recommending people try lots of different kinds of classes, particularly Ashtanga and Iyengar, to have those experiences, to pick up some of the strategies that they're using. And it's really nice that people have options and they can choose and they can play around and travel different paths, right? In yoga, even people who are doing drop-in classes and not wanting to get committed to yoga right now, they're still able to have tastes of lots of different things. And I think that's really nice.
Yeah.
Which leads me to my last question. How are you going to evolve? And how's the studio going to evolve? What are your future plans?
Ooh, I don't know. I mean, I've had this year, I've spent most of my time working on my own practice, to be honest, and being a student. Um, so I haven't really thought too much about, okay, what are we doing at the studio? I've just kind of let it tick along because I needed to step back and I needed to focus on my own practice and what have you. I ran my first retreat this year, which was amazing. So
Hawaii?
definitely, no, we didn't do Hawaii. We did a domestic retreat in the end because we couldn't get people to sign up. We had 2 sign-ups for Hawaii, and so we decided very early on, let's put it aside and do one here. So my friend TL, who was one of my teachers, who moved back to Canada and then is now living in Hawaii. That's why we were going there. I said, well, why don't you come here and we'll do a domestic retreat? So that's what we did. And it was amazing and fully booked and like 4 of the best days of my life. And I want to do more and more. I actually went and looked at a property in Bungendore on the weekend that would make an amazing retreat center, this beautiful house with a pool and beautiful gardens and a space inside where you could teach.
Plans, except I'm looking to buy a retreat center.
Well,
That
I don't have $2 million, but if I, happen to win the lotto on Thursday night, it's in the plan. But no, so we will run more retreats. Get this beginners course hammering along again and try and get more people into trying yoga and what have you.
You did a sound bath event recently that sounded like it was very well attended.
Yeah, that was fully booked, which was great. And I love the sound healing stuff. That's something that is evolved since when I bought the studio. I took on the meditation class and I wanted to do that. And I started sound work then. So, and I had that idea for this performance, because people were always like, I want to watch what you're doing. And I'm like, oh, okay, let's do that then. I get these ideas and I'm like very quick to have the idea and then get on the computer and set it up and organize it and boom, boom. And it's, you need at least 8 weeks lead time between when you've set it up and start advertising to when it actually happens. So usually I have an idea, I go and set it up and what have you, I start advertising it, and then a week before I'm delivering, I'm like, shit, I've got to think of something to deliver here. But the whole time I'm planning it in my head, and in the last week then I'm like, right, this is what I'm going to execute. And I like to work like that because I like it to be intuitive. So hopefully
ideas come to you and percolate and join together. And I hear that. I love a good project. And that's, to me, one of the things I miss having weekly students. I don't have that many weekly students anymore, weekly classes. I kind of miss that energy of working with people week to week, but I thrive on projects. And that's why I love teacher training and teaching workshops, because you create a program and then you do all the work leading up to it and then you teach it, and that's got a really different kind of energy. And I think for a lot of yoga teachers and yoga business owners, bringing those things together like you've done, having a studio with regular classes and then having events, that kind of gives you the best of both worlds, of being able to have to do the steady work of creating community and helping people develop their practice, and then having those fireworks of events that you get to really pour your creative energy into. And that's really exciting. and it brings in money that then supports the studio, right?
Exactly. And you know, there's always this thing, you know, you got to try and keep getting more people onto your mailing list, because the bigger your mailing list, the more, you know, capacity you have to share with people. You know, the more people are just going to they already like you, so they're going to directly get your information. So the soundbar thing was partially that. It was mostly just because I wanted to do it. I do things because I want to do them, and then it turns out that other people want to come and hang out with me and do it, you know, which is super nice. But yeah, look, I don't know. I'm trying and consider myself. I think I'm quite an innovator in the industry, and it was kind of reiterated to me on the weekend at that yoga conference that people were like, "You're doing amazing things for yoga in Canberra, and thank you so much." And when I wasn't quite aware of that, I kind of always felt like, oh, I'm in this island by myself doing all my thing, and I don't really look at what the other studios are doing. I see occasionally on Instagram and what have you, but I don't really look, because I don't want to get into that comparison mode. I spend a lot of time going, oh, look what they're doing, I'm not as good, and and then something happened that made me go, hang on a minute, I did that first and now they're doing it. Maybe I'm the one that they're looking at and going, hey, look at what she's doing. She's doing amazing things. Maybe I can do something like that. And so that was a real eye-opener for me, and just kind of said, you know what, Ellie, just do your thing. Just get on and do what feels right for you and follow your intuition, and everything going to work out and fall into place. So that's what I do now. You know, I can't, you know, I don't get into that comparison space and that imposter syndrome and all of that. I'm like, you know what, girl, you are past that. Just get on with things and go. And I felt it for the longest of times, you know, but, you know, I'm excited to see what next year will bring. I've had huge transformation personally this year. I've changed a lot, you know, thanks to my regular practice. I've been doing daily Sakriya now for several months, and that's, you know, really, you know, changed my life. And I'm going regularly to classes for myself, my other teachers' classes. I think that's really important. You know, we touched on it before, that teachers go to other classes, you know, and this is super important. You always learn something new, a phrase or a different way of linking postures together. And you know, you get pushed to do postures that you might avoid in your own practice and all that kind of stuff. And it's just fun, you know, it's fun.
It's energy coming in. Like, we have so much energy going out all the time to our students and for you, to your teachers. And to have someone hold space for you and to hold space for your practice, that helps you really fill your cup, right?
Totally. Like, it makes the world of difference, you know? And so yeah, so I'm excited. Like, I have no idea what we're going to do next year. I mean, a little bit here and there. Hopefully we can pull off Hawaii. We haven't really started, you know, I mean, it's all kind of set up and ready to go. We really just need to book some new dates and then start advertising it. But I don't know if financially people are going to have the money again next year. You know, you've got so many factors to think about, you know, and Canberra is a town where people are actually pretty stable, pretty affluent. They're mostly public servants, but they're still really not that keen on parting with their money, or they're putting it elsewhere, or they're, you know, stuck with it in their kids' educations or whatever. So, you know, it's really hard, but I think that doesn't mean that we undervalue what we do. We actually have to really believe in the value of what we're offering, because we give people so much space to be themselves and so much space to wind down from all of that pressure. It's actually super valuable. And there's finding a balance between charging what's reasonable and accessible for a lot of people, and what's too expensive. So I kind of balance things out with workshops. Sometimes I make them a little bit more expensive, but our regular drop-in classes, I keep that pretty cheap, because I just want people to come and do it, you know. Just get on your mat and do it, because it's good for you, it's good for the world, and you know, like, just get on and do it. You know, damn it.
Again, Canberra Yoga Space, just get on and do it.
It's going to be my new logo. I'm going to go and do an Instagram about that. Just get on your mat and do it. You know? Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking this time. I really appreciate, I know you're a very busy person, and I really appreciate your time and your energy and sharing all of your wisdom with us. Um, People, I'm going to share in the transcript, I'm going to share all the ways that people can get in touch with you and sign up for your newsletter and your Instagram and your Facebook, etc. And so they can follow you. And for our teachers in training, you know, if they're interested in coming to the studio, trying out some classes, getting on your covers list once they've graduated, I'll make sure that they have all the ways that they can get in touch with you. So
Yeah.
thank you so much.
You're welcome. I'm very passionate about giving new teachers also opportunity to teach. So, you know, I like to do that and give them a chance, because I was given a chance and I had no clue what I was doing. I mean, I kind of did, but in the yoga space, you know, I was already a trainer, right? So I knew that part, but the yoga stuff was like, oh, you know, so
Yeah.
yeah.
10 years ago, someone gave you a chance to teach your first class.
Yeah.
And then 5 years ago, you took on a studio, and now you can create those opportunities for other people. And that's just really beautiful.
Yeah, it's special, you know. Yeah. And thanks
Thank
to
you
you.
very much.
Yeah.